Hey, what's up? And welcome back to another episode of the Relationship School's Smart Couple Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gaddis, and I'm happy to be here. How are you? Close your eyes and check in. Unless you're driving, don't do that. What is going on internally right now with you? All right. Always good to be able to identify what's happening internally. That's why we teach people the Nester meditation here at the Relationship School. It's a very simple self-awareness practice so that you can educate your partner on what's going on inside. Otherwise, if they don't know and you don't know, you're probably going to misread each other a lot. Okay, this podcast is for anyone into growth and development who wants to grow through the vehicle of partnership and relationship. It's an amazing practice to grow in this context. Okay, we always appreciate reviews. Thanks for subscribing in iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. We're now on Spotify. Okay, rock it out on Spotify, please. And thanks for your reviews. If you've listened a while and you haven't left us a review, my challenge to you is please take a moment to do that. I know you're busy, and I'm really grateful. So check this one out from William. Jason has helped me find many tools that I was missing while I was married. I'm so thankful for how much I've grown from listening to this podcast and all of his webinars. My wife and I just got a divorce, and I believe the reason it happened is because of a closed heart on both sides. I'm learning it now, how important it is to communicate everything with your partner and not hold anything back. Thank you, Jason. Cool, William. I mean, sorry to hear about the divorce, and for some people, that's a necessary move, and I appreciate your courage to do that and to work on yourself and to realize, hey, I had a closed heart. So my challenge is always, how can I keep opening my heart back to the person I supposedly love? Because the longer you guys let it go on, the harder it can be to open, right? When there's lots of resentment, years of resentment. And when you can't even look your partner in the eye, it's so intense. Wow. So again, I appreciate all of you listeners, how tender it is to be in a long-term relationship and to be upset and to not be able to work through it. So this podcast is hopefully a free way that you can learn how to work through stuff together and alone. And, we're trying to provide you the best resources possible. So if you want a deeper dive, always come to the Relationship School and get that education you never got. Okay, you can apply by going to relationshipschool.com/DPIR. We're enrolling now for the fall. Okay. Continuing our series with men, for men, by men. I've got another amazing guest here, one I met on social media. And it's been just a treat to get to know this character. Bashea, Bashea Williams, or Paul Williams, is described as an intellectual emotionalist. Okay, someone who understands what a man thinks and what a woman feels. All right, I like that. This guy's a licensed clinical social worker on the East Coast, and he's just a cool guy. And I just appreciate how he's trying to help men, particularly men of color, but all men really, working through interpersonal challenges. He's got a great story. We dig into that a little bit here. And I'm always curious, how do people become therapists? How does a man become a therapist? What happens, right? Because I was a therapist. It's really fascinating to me. So we're going to hear that. And then he's got some great tips. He's got a great book out called Dear Future Wife. Check that out. So listen to the end for your action step. And let's dig into my interview with Bashea, or Paul. All right, welcome to the show, Paul Williams.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. It's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So, Paul, I originally sort of met you through Instagram because Brandon Alexander, who I'm interviewing also soon, he had one of your videos on his thing, and I watched your video and I was like, dude, this guy's like totally on it here. And it was really the video, you were in your car and you were recording a video of talking about it was basically a message to women who are dealing with unavailable men.
Right.
And I know I deal with that pain point a lot. I used to be an unavailable guy. So I'd love to get into that today. But before we do, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, Paul? Just who you are, where you live, married, kids, no kids, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I am Paul Bashea Williams. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Maryland and also licensed in Washington, D.C. I practice at Hearts and Minds Counseling. I see individuals, couples, groups, kids. Youngest is 5, oldest is 72. So I see pretty much everybody. But I'm originally from New York, but I live here in Maryland. Went to school down in Tennessee for basketball, and I'm single. I have a 13-year-old boy who is my guy, which I call him. I talk about him a lot on my Instagram. We did meet each other through Instagram at Bashea Williams, which I post a lot about men and relationships, men and mental health, relationships in general. And I have a book that's out, Dear Future Wife, A Man's Guide, and a Woman's Reference to Healthy Relationships. So I'm also a blogger, a writer. So I do pretty much anything that deals with emotional health and, making us men more available to what we need in order to have healthy relationships and our better selves.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me a little bit about your story. How did you become a therapist?
So it actually called me. I had no intentions of being a therapist. I actually, probably in about 6th grade, I met this gentleman who came into my neighborhood. I lived in lower income. My mother was a property manager, which required us to live on site. And it was a lot of different things happening in the neighborhood as far as crime, drugs, and all that. But she was a property manager, so we lived there. And she had some social workers come in. And it was a white, redheaded, gay male who kind of like took on the role of the social worker, kind of like helping, minority kids, boys, girls in the neighborhood. And he used to hold these groups in the neighborhood. And I always sat in the back. I was a quiet kid. I was overweight. Didn't want to really participate. I was just new to the neighborhood. Kind of didn't fit in because my mother was a property manager. And so we weren't, I guess, as impoverished as the neighborhood. And also my mother being a property manager, kind of like the kid you got to watch out for, like, who knows if we really can hang with him type of thing. So I kind of sat in the back, but then he kind of encouraged me to help facilitate the groups of the young kids. So I did that. And then
how old were you about at that time?
Probably about 12. Okay. 12, 13. So we had groups, we had different trips he used to plan, like Disney World. I was a chaperone and stuff like that. And friends used to always come with me with their issues, with whether it's relationships or just struggling with their parent dynamic. Whatever it was, I was always the go-to. And I was one that also holds secrets. So you could tell me anything and I wouldn't share it, and kind of be like a sounding board.
Yeah.
But when I went to school, I thought immediately, because he said go into social work. And I said, well, I looked at the salaries of social workers, and that's just not what I want to do. So, but at the time, so I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a juvenile judge, or I wanted to be in physical therapy, and have my own business. So, but when I got into the classes, I just didn't like them. It just didn't feel good. And then I took a marriage and family class, and I fell in love with it. And then I came home one summer and worked at a therapeutic camp to do some admin work for the same gentleman who's now my mentor. And I started out as an admin doing the processing and fees and all that. By the end of the camp, I was a counselor. And I said, this is it. This is where I need to be. And so he kind of convinced me that, without giving too much information, it's like, you can make a good, decent living. And I said, no, I still don't see the salary. But at that time, this was probably maybe 98. And as a social worker, he was making over $130,000. So in part-time private practice. And then he would tell me, once you get out of school, like, I'll give you half of my practice, kind of like, you can do it, like, type of thing. So I was like, okay, I can still consider that. And so I went and got my master's. And then I came back, and that's it. Like, after that, it just kind of took off. Like, I did my hours and everything. And then I'm 1 year and 2 months into being full-time private practice. So that's, pretty much my story. Again, he's still my mentor today. We share an office in the same building, so we're still
Nice.
connected. And it's a good relationship, and it's kind of like I said, it's kind of been my calling, my purpose. So that's how I got into it.
That's so cool. Wow. And along the way, with your own relationship, maybe victories and losses along the way, what were you learning about yourself in terms of intimacy and love and connection?
Oh, so much. And it's funny that you mentioned that because that's where my book came from. As I was going through classes and going through relationships and being, readily emotionally available initially until you have experiences of heartbreak or you have experiences of when relationships don't turn out or people don't turn out to be who you think they are, and you have mistrust and you have manipulation, and you go through those things. And I got to a point where I said, okay, I'm not available physically for an intimate relationship with a woman, but I'm available to be intimate with the way I write. So that's how I transitioned from wanting to have a girlfriend or whatever, at a young age, to putting into the paper. And that's how I started my blog. And that's where my intimacy lied in writing, and creating these stories that maybe that didn't happen, or creating these scenarios and creating these written fantasies of a healthy relationship where it's safe for a man to express how he feels and where he doesn't get rejected. So you have paper where there's no rejection. Maybe there's correction if you mess up, but you can fix that. You can edit that, but you can't go through these things and be like, okay, well, that just happened and I'm good. So it doesn't work like that. So that's where it started.
Yeah, that's cool. So what is, let's just talk about Dear Future Wife just for a minute. What is that really about? Tell us a little bit about that. So if people want to buy that, we can, put a link to that at the end, but just give us a sense of more about the book.
Sure. It's about healthy relationships. It's about learning how men and women operate in relationships, learning how men operate outside of a relationship as well, and making us available for the intimate moment, making us available to really identify things that we've experienced, different traumatic events, or things that we've never learned from, whether it's our fathers or society. What do we give it this idea of what a healthy relationship looks like? Kind of debunking that stuff and going back to, the inner child and saying, okay, I'm available to be vulnerable. And this is how I rebuild my thoughts, my emotions, and my actions within a relationship. Mm-hmm. For singles, it's for married, it's for people just dating, engaged, it's for even people who are divorced, to kind of like reprogram our thoughts around healthy relationships.
Yeah, cool. And why focus on men? Because
initially I was saying there were so many different things out there telling women what they need to do. So, we have men telling you need to do this to make me feel a certain way, or to make me want to propose to you or be in a relationship with you. Women are getting all these, all this advice from everybody, but nobody's telling the man how we need to really heal, how we need to really work on ourselves to be available for relationships. Because you can tell a woman to give you everything you need, but if you're not emotionally available for it, you're not mentally prepared for it, you're not psychologically strong enough to handle the different things that happen within relationships, then it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Damn right. It's not. I tried that.
Yeah.
I tried to have relationships with a guarded heart. It didn't work very well.
Right. So just being available and just being available to trust yourself that what happens within a relationship, that you're still going to be strong enough to survive, where you're not at the place where you're so damaged that you're hurting anyone that comes in contact with you.
Right.
Not on purpose, but.
Yeah, sure. Just because that's what happens in relationships. Now, it sounds like you were like me growing up, in that you were maybe sensitive and empathic, and you were the friend that people turned to open up. And you were somewhat available in a way. Was there an incident or things that happened in your life that had you protect yourself in a relationship? Like, is this part of your story, or have you always been fairly available as a man?
Yeah, at one point, so I had this idea that I was going to go to college, find my wife, and then graduate and have the the house, the dog, the family, and the degree, and everything will work out fine. In the process of that, going through college, having a bad relationship, it was traumatic for me. It was the one was most vulnerable, most available, most visible, in a sense that I wanted to let the world know that I'm in this relationship, that I'm taken, that I'm giving my all to this person. And I was pretty popular in college, and everybody knew of my relationship. Even when it was long distance, it was like I made it clear that I was with someone. And then she came to the school and the relationship crumbled in front of everybody.
Uh-huh.
So now I said, okay, well, that fantasy of me being available and me being this man and showing this to, I'm not going to show it to another person, not right now, at least not while I'm in college.
Yeah.
So it's just like, no way. So yeah, that started that, like, okay, I'm available to listen and to give advice, but I'm not available emotionally for connection.
Yeah, totally. And sounds like there was some pain in there. Did you seek out therapy, or were you like a typical guy that was like, I don't need therapy, I'm fine, I'll figure this out myself?
So I did not seek out, because I wasn't in the mind frame of that's what I needed at the time. I had a family who really couldn't answer the questions, really couldn't be there how I needed them. Of course, my guy friends were like, well, it's party time type of thing. And then I did have my mentor, but he was far away. He was back in Maryland. I was in Tennessee. So we would talk sporadically, but there was so much time in between us having conversations that it wasn't therapy. It was a conversation between somebody who tells me I need to get into the field. And I'm telling them I'm okay, because I had all my friends, I had this new environment, and that was it. Like, I didn't seek it until after I finished school, when I realized, hey, I'm repeating the same cycles. Nothing is getting better. I want difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really started out.
Okay. Yeah. And then I have to ask you a question about race here, if I may. We were talking earlier, and I was letting you know that I took this course on equity and diversity because I'm wanting, just as a white male, I'm wanting to learn more about my blinders in relationship to people of color. And one of the teachers of the class said that people of color, she was generalizing, of course, but she was saying that there tends to be some blocks around going and asking for help among that sort of different cultural groups. And I just wanted to get your take on that. Do you think that's true for, say, Black people, or, like, give me your sense on that?
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many different reasons. I mean, historically, trusting the medical field in general. We think about what happened historically, but just in the sense of going to someone and telling them your problems and expecting them to fix it, or going to someone and trusting them with your issues. The word therapy was considered for crazy people. Like, you have to have something mentally going on, or you have to be mentally challenged in a sense that you can't just function. Like, we sought counsel through the elders, or somebody's great grandma or great aunt who had all the answers, and you go talk to them.
Yeah.
And not all that stuff was, healthy information to do. Sometimes it was like, oh, get over it, or just pray about it. That was therapy, but that's not therapy. So that can be in addition to therapy, but that was, one of the things we just didn't do. I know there's a big push now, and I'm part of that push, to get more African Americans into therapy, to buy in, not to only become clinicians, but to be sitting on the other side of the couch.
Totally.
Deal with some of those traumatic experiences, whether it's family, whether it's, day-to-day walking, PTSD, depression, anxiety, all those things that we really need to address.
Yeah. Do you think, one of the reasons I connect with you is because we both sort of share this desire to help men, open up and become available fathers and husbands and partners. And I I'm aware. I wrote my master's paper in graduate school on the disconnected male, and I've run men's groups for years. And I'm just curious to get your take. Do you think, African American men have another layer of resistance than, say, white men, or do you think just both equally because of male conditioning? They're both up against just the conditioning of like, oh, you don't do that, you don't open up, like you're going to get hurt or made fun of, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's similar, but I think it is an added layer of trusting another man, another black man, trusting that they won't use your stuff against you, trusting that you're not in a competition, trusting yourself that if you're vulnerable, that you'll be okay. Yeah. I think that's one of the things we're taught to be strong. Of course, just men in general, be strong, be the breadwinners. But when so much has been stripped away from you historically, there's that extra challenge.
Absolutely.
With your experiences with that. So there's the general as men, but then there's the added experiences through just historically the African American experience, here. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. What do you think some of the biggest blocks to just men are in relationship that they have to deal with when they come to therapy, or that, let's say a guy's listening and he hasn't been to therapy, he hasn't gotten coaching. What are some of the things that might stand in his way?
Again, it goes back to trusting yourself and saying that it's okay to be vulnerable. And what does vulnerable look like? Does that mean you come crying and throwing everything to the wind and just saying, I'm weak and fix me, doc, and all this type of stuff? No, that's not what it is. It's vulnerable. It's being able to say, these things happen to me and they keep reoccurring, or they keep playing in my head, and they keep causing me to, or influencing me to make different decisions that I want to get out of this cycle that I can't, because nothing that I'm trying on my own is working.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a safe space where, hey, we can just talk about some stuff. Like we do it, in spurts in certain atmospheres. Like we might go to the barbershop, we might talk about stuff. Some may be surface, some may be, maybe once in a while a deep conversation, or just hanging with your buds, and you guys are talking about stuff, and it's like, oh man, you're really dealing with that. Like, what does a man who's not a trained professional say? I've been through that. I'll just, you'll be all right. Just kind of like,
right.
Here, or smoke this and you'll be okay. But stuff wears off. What do you do with it now?
Yep. Yeah, the pattern's still there. The pain's still there. My friends didn't really help. Like I drank a couple beers and I felt a little better that night, but my pain's still there the next day.
Right.
Yeah. So I like the point of, I kind of hear you indirectly challenging men to, your friends are probably not going to cut it when it comes to the work you really need to do on yourself.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's it.
And what if I'm a guy and I'm like, yeah, but therapy, I don't really resonate with that. I hear what you're saying, Paul, but like, is there another, like you talked about your mentor? Maybe there's a way some men can find a mentor in their life. Like, will you give us some other options besides, say, therapy, in case a man is still a little too jammed up for therapy?
Yeah, I mean, there's mentorships. There's you get in groups that aren't considered therapy. It might be just kind of like men's challenging groups, or you said you did some coaching before and some groups and stuff like that, and just someone who feels like they have similar experiences, and maybe they can give you some advice of like how to get through this without it feeling like therapy, but some like real answers, concrete answers.
Yeah.
And essentially, I have a lot of men who come into the office and said, this doesn't feel like what I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought you were going to come in here sitting down and legs crossed, and we're going to talk about different treatment modalities, and you use technical terms and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm talking like, hey, I understand, man. And then we really have a genuine conversation. And again, it's a place where if you need to let some things go, you let them go.
Yeah.
So it's not always about that, what it looks like on TV.
Right.
Or the original thought of what therapy is. And a lot of stuff like you, Brandon, and some other people, it's a ton of information on Instagram, on social media, different groups and stuff like that, that you can kind of connect with that might be a viable option in the meantime.
Right. You can listen to this podcast, right, for months and get a lot of help.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool what's out there now and available to people. I feel like we got all the tools we really need to, like our parents, they didn't have this access.
Right.
The access is like crazy good right now. Yeah. Okay, cool. And what about, what can a man do in a relationship? Like just a simple thing that he can do to open up more, to be more vulnerable. Because I hear you saying we got to reframe vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness.
Yeah.
And what's one or two things a man can do just to start to take risks in his relationship, either with other men or with women?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always say this. I think just men in general, I think we give three opportunities within a relationship with a woman to be vulnerable, to kind of like test the waters and see how she responds to a vulnerable moment. And I think we need to, again, not necessarily rely on what her response is, but rely on what it means to us to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Is that a safe space? Is that a person that I can share this with? Because if that is, then what's holding you back from doing that?
Mm-hmm.
What has happened in that relationship that says, hey, this is not a safe space? And are you able to talk about it? Because I think sometimes we get to that point where, somebody does betray us within a relationship. We don't say anything. We just say, okay, that's how that person is. So I'm going to leave it at that. I know I can't share that. But then we also need to take it to the next step and say, hey, this wasn't cool.
Yeah.
I didn't like that response. That didn't make me feel like I can come to you again about certain things. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
We're just told to suck it up and kind of deal with it on so many levels. And we apply that across the board, even through our vulnerability. Like, hey, I was vulnerable. That was it. So I'm going to suck it up now. No. So the next step is, again, I was vulnerable. Your response wasn't what I was looking for or what I needed or what I wanted. So let's explore that.
Absolutely. I love it. And what can women do in those moments to support their man in opening up?
I think also sometimes that women have to be reprogrammed in a sense, as far as their thought process when a man is vulnerable. And what does that mean? Because again, it's not just that we're taught to be the strong ones and to push through emotion and not to be emotional, but women expect that because they're used to it or because they heard that as well. So just being able to listen and to ask, how could I be there for you?
Yeah.
And not jump to the conclusion of, oh, something's wrong, you need to go talk to somebody else, or that's a woman's trait, or that's, staying away from that stuff. Especially when you expect a man to be vulnerable, then he shows it and you're like, oh, whoa, this is too much.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's going to shut him down, right?
Yeah. So I think, being open to it and really understanding what you're asking for and listening, and really listening.
Yeah. Do you think men are getting it? Are more men opening up? Are more men coming to therapy, or are we just getting more kind of bitter and shut down? Just like culturally, what do you think collectively?
I guess, see, this is a hard question for me to answer because I'm in the field and because I'm connected to a lot of male clinicians, because a lot of men are reaching out to me, whether publicly or privately, and have been for years. I see both happening. So I'm seeing men reach out. I'm seeing men saying that, hey, I'm ready to talk about this. I'm seeing more groups and stuff like that. Now, it might be another man who's out there who's saying the opposite. Like, we still aren't talking. We still need more, which is true. But I do see a shift in a sense that it's acceptable. Now, is that because we have more access to people who are doing it through social media? It's more public, or has this always been going on? Right. So it's hard to really determine. But if I were to just walk in and just answer the question without overanalyzing it, just like I just did, I would say that more men are reaching out and opening up.
Okay. And do you have a sense of age groups? Like, I get curious about what your thoughts are on millennial men. It seems to me that more millennial men are a little more open to personal growth and development because they follow influencers like Tim Ferriss or someone else who's actually talking about their vulnerability and their problems openly, somewhat, and they're highly influential to these young people. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you think that's true?
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And I think there's less, in a sense, like worry or judgment. Like everybody's able to, ready to create their own lane and be free and say, hey, I'm not worried about what another person is doing. Like this is me. Like this is my identity, and they're connected to it. We have, again, millennials have social media. So it's just like, I see one person doing it. They got popularity over them doing it. So let me do it as well. Or I'm faced with so many different new challenges. Tradition is no longer controlling what I want to do. So I'm able to just jump out there and say, hey, I'm open, accept me or not, regardless of what your response is. Like, I'm out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of that is happening as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you think the root of the problem is for men? Like, if we dig down to the core, why are men so hard in relationships, or why are some men, why can they be so hard in relationships?
In addition to experience, I think, again, it goes back to what we're taught. It goes back to what we see from our fathers or uncles or grandfathers. And the initial message that we get when we're growing up. The initial message is, again, suck it up.
Totally. Suck it up, boy.
You're 2 years old, but be a man.
Right.
Girls cry, men don't. So I think that's ingrained and that's constantly pushed. And then you hear it in your house, and then you go outside and your male friends are saying the same things. And then as a 5-year-old boy, if you cry, then the girls are laughing at you because you're crying. Like, it's just so much.
It's constant.
Yeah. So it comes from all angles. And then we grow up and we're constantly we're hearing these things and experiencing these things. And it's like, okay, well, here I am. Now I'm a brick wall.
Right.
My emotion is anger.
Yep. Yeah. And you can't get in. And now I'll be an adult man and I'll have relationship problems and I won't know why. Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're winding down here, Paul. This has been great. What you alluded to a movement, somewhat of a movement earlier when you said, there's some of us trying to get this out, like get more people of color, say, out into therapy and becoming clinicians. Will you tell us about that? Like what are you a part of and what's going on there?
Well, I'm a part of just this Black male clinicians, Black male therapists that are just saying, hey, it's okay to come to therapy.
Yeah.
And that's really addressing the man. So there's a movement with that. And there's just, in general, just the minorities are pushing to get us into therapy, us to checking our mental health issues or mental illness. And it's not taboo. And you can't just pray about everything. Like, you can pray and still go to therapy. So that's a movement too, like pray and therapy. These young boys need therapy. Young girls need therapy. These generational curses and trauma that we need to address and not sweep under the rug. So I think that's just the movement, and then addressing the different things like anxiety, depression, and not just our community, but just in general. Like, we minimize what depression is. We minimize what anxiety is. And, there's things that trigger that all the time, and we wonder why we're not functioning. We're not having healthy relationships with other people, but also with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's cool. Where can people find out about resources like you? We'll certainly get to your website. Is there a general website, or is it more just people like you saying, hey, I'm standing up, trying to advocate for more folks go to therapy?
Yeah, I would say your podcast. I would say there's a lot of different podcasts. There's one that says, hey, man, are you good? There are, of course, tons of social media platforms, Instagram, that talk about, you just hashtag therapy, you hashtag whatever, and it's just all over. So look for resources in general. for a therapist, Psychology Today is a great website to go to. I just started writing therapy for Black men .org, which is going to be a great resource. There's therapy for Black girls. There's tons of resources out there for, just anyone who needs to get the help or who wants to get the help.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. And tell us again where we can find your book, My Future Wife. What was that?
Dear Future Wife.
Dear Future Wife. Yeah, so, Dear Future Wife, and also your Instagram handle. We'll put it all in the show notes, but just give us a sense of where we can find you.
Okay, sure. So you can follow my blog at BasheaWilliams.com, and that's BASHEA Williams.com. You can also follow me on IG and Facebook through Bashea Williams. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really tweet. You can find my book there. It's under the shop Bashea. We'll also have mental health resources. Like ADHD is my superpower, but my book and some other
nice
stuff. So, but everything is pretty much Bashea Williams across the board. My therapy website is Hearts and Mind Counseling, and that's heartsinmindcounseling.com, where you can book a session. I do have in office, which is in Maryland. I'm licensed in Maryland and DC, but I also can do coaching, consulting. I have a couple of clients out in California, Texas, just kind of like all over. So.
Okay, great. We'll put all that in the show notes. And one final question. As you may know or may not know, I run the relationship school, and I'm on a mission to help, get this kind of education into young people's hands. We want to reach 1 million teens and young adults with relationship education. So that's one of the things we're up to. We're in a couple schools. We want to train teachers eventually. And I always like to ask my guests, if I had a room full of adolescents, say 1,000 people, I was in an auditorium, and I only had a couple minutes to give them one piece of relationship advice, and you were whispering in my ear, what would you want me to tell them?
First thing is take your time, get to know yourself, know your self-worth, your value, and don't fall pressure to what it looks like or what society is telling you to do. And just really take your time and really get to know yourself and value yourself. Self-love is first.
Yeah, huge. Cool. Thanks, Paul. It's been great hanging with you. I really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, man. Okay, awesome. Remember, go to BasheaWilliams.com. That's EA Williams.com. BasheaWilliams.com. He's got a lot of stuff on there about his Dear Future Wife book, stuff on parenting. You can get all his social links up there, Instagram, etc. Okay, action step. I want you to journal. Okay, take a note from younger Bashea there and write right now what you got out of this podcast. Just write one thing, and you might even share another detail about a memory you have from your childhood that was the first place where you started to learn about emotional, relational literacy, where it was like, oh, there's another world here. I think it's really beautiful that, as a kind of aggressive, sometimes young man who was protecting himself, the vulnerability came through, and a mentor saw that in him. Super powerful. Wow. So anyway, go check him out. Do the action step, journal right now. And then if you want to take it to the next level, share it with someone. Okay. Share someone what you learned, what your journal entry was. All right. Awesome. Okay. Make sure you're in our Smart Couple Facebook group. Okay. If you don't know about that, there's awesome conversations happening in there. We have our relationship coaches in there moderating the group. And so it's a pretty safe place, I would think, for a free Facebook group. It's pretty awesome. Go check it out. You can go just type in Smart Couple Monogamy in your Facebook search bar and you'll find it. You can ask to join. Okay. All right, everybody. Enjoy. Thanks. More soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Relationship School fans and Smart Couple listeners, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. All right. Do us a favor, subscribe, share one of these videos with a friend. All right. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships. And you are one of them. So thank you.